Hey songwriters, welcome back to another video here at Home Songwriting. I'm Chad Shank and I am ultra excited to welcome Amanda B. Perry to the show today. And why am I excited? Because Amanda writes amazing songs and she has one of the most incredible voices. Amanda B. Perry is someone who you're going to want to add to your playlists and check out her new music and her past music as well. So we're going to jump in and talk to her about her songwriting, what she has coming up, and more. So if you like this, be sure to hit subscribe and also check out the links in the description so you can join us for live at Home Songwriting workshop. So let's go. Amanda, welcome to At Home Songwriting.
Yay! Thank you so much for having me. I am super honored to be a part of this with you. So thank you.
Oh, well, thank you. I mean, I'm excited to talk to you because I've listened to your music and I'm just really excited to learn more about your musical history and kind of what you have going on as well. So I guess maybe introduce yourself. I know you're based here in Minnesota, but you're a singer-songwriter. How else do you describe yourself?
I am. So I'm a singer-songwriter. I've actually sung forever, my whole life, in school and different performance venues and stuff like that, and theater and stuff like that. But yeah, just in the past, 4 or 5 years, I've started actually just sharing what I've written and kind of bringing that out again after a little bit of a brief hiatus in family life.
Yeah.
So, just being able to share all these brand new baby songs that were growing for all these years. And I'm a singer-songwriter. I play piano. I do mainly a lot of my stuff. And then when I perform out, a lot of covers as well. So.
Sure. So obviously I know you said you kind of were in theater and kind of always have been in music. Did you have favorite artists growing up, or who were your inspirations, as you were kind of coming up or growing up?
Yeah. So growing up, I would say that my biggest inspirations kind of were famous and unfamous. I would say like Michael Jackson, Whitney Houston were huge for me, like Mariah Carey, obviously, these powerhouse performers growing up. And then in a closer relation, my brother is also a singer-songwriter, piano player. And he, I kind of saw him, play a lot of stuff and write a lot of stuff from a very young age. And so it was kind of like, I want to do that.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Your voice is like, when you listen to your music, and people watching can go find some of your past work on the streaming site. So it's Amanda B. Perry. But your voice has such a rich, smooth, I hear sound kind of visually. So to me, it's like, it's a nice, lush, kind of thick voice. I don't even know how to describe it, but who do you think you sound like?
I don't know. I'm the only person anybody's ever said that I remind them of is Cher, but I think that's just because there's that round aspect to some of my, flips or stuff like that when I sing. Sure. I think why I've never heard that, but in the past year now, I think somebody's told me that 3 or 4 times. So I'm like, I don't hear. If you're asking me who I sound like that to other people, that's for sure what they say.
Yeah. No, I do hear little glimpses of Cher. I would say that as well, but there's also something I hear a little bit of the Hart sisters, the Wilson sisters that are in Heart.
Absolutely.
There's yeah. So how then, obviously you said you're singer-songwriter, you play piano. How do you describe your style of music then?
Yeah, which has been a very difficult journey for me to come to an answer with. But I think all I can ever come to is it's like the pop, soul / Americana singer-songwriter combo platter.
It's the appetizer plate.
Yeah, that's available box to check on all of the. That's me.
Yeah. You know, it's funny because a lot of the musicians that I talk to, and myself included, I think describing our own work is one of the hardest
Oh,
things ever because we hear it differently than everybody else does. And
yes.
we have a vision of what we think it is, but is it really that when it goes out, you know?
I was sitting at a venue one evening listening to, it was like open mic night situation. And I got up and performed, and the gentleman sitting next to me was with another band. And I came back and sat down and I said, what genre do you think that sounds like to you? And he's like, it's kind of just you. I'm like, that wasn't helpful, but okay.
But that's good though, right? I mean, you want to be unique and, you know, you kind of want to have your own thing, but you know,
Right.
people want descriptions.
That's why I've been trying to come up with one.
So obviously this channel is about songwriting, and I know that you do a lot of your own songwriting. Did you start that at an early age? Did that come along with the music thing for you, or how did that develop for you?
Absolutely. From like the age, I don't know, very young, probably 9, 10, we would just be like sitting and writing like just these love notes or poems, you know. And then as I watched my brother kind of come out with these, because he took piano lessons, so he was really, you know, educated in music. And so I kind of watched him put together a song, and I'm like, oh, well, as I got older, I was like, well, I'm going to put words to a song on my piano, you know. And so I always call them the key of C years, because in so many years just writing love songs in the key of C over and over again. I could probably have a book of songs just of
Yeah.
that, from like
Well,
age 11 to like 14.
Taylor Swift has done okay writing a lot of songs in the key of C, so it's all good.
Yes.
So I know you mentioned your brother took piano lessons. Did you take lessons, or are you more like self-taught, or what does that look like for you?
Thanks. I took them for a week, and then she said, my wonderful piano instructor was awesome, but she said I had to trim my nails if I was going to play piano. And then I said, I think I have to be done playing the piano less.
That's amazing.
Off via ear, you know, as
Yeah.
I believe you did, right? For a while early on.
I took like one lesson,
Unless I
and
know.
yeah, and the teacher, I went to her house and she had a little upright piano, and like she didn't want to teach me Janet Jackson songs because that's who I was into, and I was like, no, I don't want to learn that other stuff. I want to learn what's on the radio. So I just started teaching myself.
Yeah, absolutely. It's tough when you have to fight that battle. So we just went on our own way and learned by ear, which is, you know, I look back and I'm like, man, Amanda, think of all the awesome chords you would know if you just stuck with it.
You know what, though, from a songwriting perspective, I know a lot of people that are very well trained. They could sit down and play almost any piece of music, but if you ask them to like come up with something or write a song, that's where
Right.
they kind of freeze. So I think some of us are more prone to create and sort of, you know, pave our own road rather
Yeah.
than sort of follow that. So there are times where I think, oh, I wish I could play more technically, but then there's other times where I'm like, but I wouldn't do the same thing, I don't think, if I knew all of that.
Right. Right. I think that's true. That's very true. Sometimes when you're locked into something mentally and you don't have that available vision for anything to come in, sometimes I feel like you're not as easily able to be creative, maybe. So
Yeah. Were you performing the songs that you were writing back in the day, or was it just more for kind of personal use, or what did that look like?
Emily would be able to come down to the basement and I'd be like, okay, this is what this song is about. Get ready for it. And they'd get to listen. And then of course, as you get older, then it's like, oh, well, I'm going to bring this to the 4-H performance, and I'm going to bring this, you know, to here and here. So yeah, I was trying to really get it out there as much as I could.
Awesome. Were you in 4-H?
I was. I was in 4-H for quite a long time, actually. Part of the Valley Viewers in
Okay.
Keegan.
I was never part of 4-H, but I grew up in South Dakota, so a lot of my aunts and uncles were.
Yeah,
And since I've moved to Minnesota, like the performances that the 4-H kids do at the state fair are amazing.
yeah. The Share the Fun is
Yeah.
what called, and I even wrote one of my songs that I wrote early on was part of one of our shows one time. It was like, yeah, I just remember that was a very early song that I wrote under, I think it was called Friends Forever. And I think that was part of our Share the Fun that year, which I think we got a pretty good score on, if I'm not mistaken.
That sounds very positive and upbeat. Was it that type of song?
Yeah, they hadn't gotten super dramatic and dark at that point yet.
Okay.
So
Um, do you feel that your writing then has evolved over time?
I sure hope so. I think it has. Yeah, I mean, the storylines have progressed, and I think they give me they kind of say I love to write love songs, and they're not wrong. I love love songs, and I love that storyline, and that has kind of come up with me since I was little. So that's just in there. It's solid. It's not going anywhere anytime soon.
Yeah. Are you writing about all aspects of love, or is it more like new love, or what is that like?
Absolutely. Um, so here's the thing, like, I think that is what I've kind of branched out in the past, 7 years. It's like 7 or 8 years. It's like, okay, it can't just be about I love you and this is amazing. It's going to be I love you and I lost you, or I lost you before I could love you, or the bad parts of love relationship, the sexy parts, the ugly parts, the new, the old. It's like there's so many aspects of it that you can tackle. It's definitely not, a small subject as simple as it can sound. It's just there's so broad of a spectrum of things you can write about with love. So I found, and it's not just relationship love, right? Like there's so many forms. So it keeps me busy. I think I'm okay writing with it.
Yeah, no. So me personally, like I grew up kind of listening to some of the same music that you had mentioned. Like the 80s were like my key like music time, Michael and Janet and Whitney and all of that stuff.
Yeah.
So like I was prone to write love songs as well because that's what pop songs are, right? They're mostly love songs. And I think I used to feel a little bad about that, but there in reality, there's a reason why that is because it's universal, right? Like everybody experiences it at some form or wants to experience it. So it becomes a universal topic. So I think it's, the key is to make it new and not say what's been said a million times.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I I always joke, like some of my cheating songs, most cheating songs are from the aspect of the person who cheated or who got cheated on. And it's like they're sad and they're hurt but I've definitely take more of I'm the cheater, and like, I'm looking at myself, and there, you almost can like turn the table a little bit and be like, feel sorry for me, even though
Yeah.
I'm the, like,
Yeah.
I know there's plenty of songs like that, but I feel like you don't hear as many. You hear more of like, I'm hurt, you did this, where it's like, I hurt you, but,
But that's a really good tip, if people are watching this and they're maybe newer to songwriting or something too, is like just changing the perspective can
yeah,
open up a lot of different avenues for sure.
totally. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
now I know that I've seen you performing online sometimes. I know you've done some live streams. You've been going around and also doing live performances, which is great that we can actually do that again.
Yes.
Um, are you testing out new songs in kind of those forums at this point, or are you kind of keeping the new stuff quiet at this point?
No, I'm always sharing it, especially, if we're going to go in and record new music for an album per se. I want to make sure that I'm constantly making sure I like all these different parts of a song. And, if there's anything to tweak here and there, I'll hear it when I'm doing a show, or if somebody comes up to me and says, oh, I really like that. Like, what is that? Or what's that about? And it's like, okay, that was a good one. I'm going to keep that one and add that one to the list. Or so I do like to add it. The problem with my stuff with live audiences sometimes is a lot of my stuff can be a little big and a little slow, which isn't always what I have on my set list when I play, a winery, a
Okay,
bar.
sure. Yeah.
It really depends on where I'm playing, what I can bring out of mine, but I absolutely do bring out mine.
Awesome. What does your writing process look like?
So as you can probably tell, I talk a lot about the melody and about the piano, because that is where it always begins for me. I'm not it's not necessarily about the word or thought of a story. It's always music first for me. It's been that way forever.
Well,
So I am a part of where I met you is through the Singer-Songwriters Challenge group online. And they, of course, the prompts, these word prompts or picture prompts or whatever. And then, that gives you this open door to write. That's the first time I've ever started with anything like that when I joined a few years back of looking at a word. But even still, it took me hearing a melody to come up with anything that I can use with that word or that idea. So it's
interesting.
always like, it'll wake me up in the night. It'll be like a couple of years back, I wrote my only country song ever. And it woke me up in the middle of the night. And so I grabbed my little phone, the little voice memo thing, and I just go in the bathroom. In the village on Sunset. It's like, oh yeah. And then I'll wake up in the morning, I'm like, oh yeah. I'll just kind of come down to the piano and I'll play there. So it's always music first. If I'm driving in the car, same thing. I'll just hear something. And then with words, what'll happen is, this is kind of fun. I'm sure this has happened for you. It's like you hear yourself mumble along and I'll listen back to it and there will be words in there. And maybe they're not real understandable words that you could hear, but my brain will come to match the sound that my voice is creating. And the crazy part to me is I'll write these words down and I'll kind of start writing a story from it. And the story then fills itself in. It's kind of like something will happen where I'll hear the words come out of my mumbles and I'm able to kind of piece together this story and this, song. So, and then of course, sometimes I have to sit and think like, does that make sense?
Yeah.
And to pull other lyrics and just kind of sit with it. But yeah, it's always a story for me. There's always something I can pull from. And I always say, sometimes it's not my personal story or my personal journey that I'm writing about, but I'm imagining it, or I've heard it before from somebody, or I've heard a story, or I've imagined it or dreamt a story. And so then that story just kind of comes out and it kind of becomes my story. So when I'm writing it down and I'm singing it eventually, it's like, that totally is me. That totally happened to me. That was me. This is my, and it's like, no, it wasn't. That had nothing to do with you. But that's how it builds, and that's how I write. It's just it, but it always starts with a melody for some reason for me.
Awesome.
So, yeah.
Well, a couple things. So, a lot of hit songwriters like Sia, she writes melody first. So, like, she does the mumble.
About that, and I was like, that's me. That's totally what I do.
Yeah, and if you take Ryan Tedder's course online through studio.com, like that's how he suggests writing too, is start with the melody and mumble sing. So that's really good.
Yeah.
The theory on that is that you're actually tapping more into your subconscious when you're thinking in melody than if you're thinking about lyric, because lyric is actually more in your analytical mind.
Sure.
I don't know if that's true, but it sounds possible to me.
Totally. Yeah. Well, and then it's easier to kind of create a story, right? Like,
yeah. So you mentioned singing about, other people, things that you see happening, or it might be someone else's story. That's another thing about songwriting is it doesn't have to be factual to be true.
Right.
And I always think about that. It's like, as long as it's believable and it's an authentic emotion, the facts kind of don't matter in that, it's all about how do you feel it.
Yeah. And you're putting together this visual through your words and through different, like your hot words, right? That'll grab somebody's heart, or something in their head will click like, oh, when she said that, that brings up a lot, or the chord that she's saying that word with, that brings up a lot. And it's because you're kind of coming up with this story along the way. It'll hit different spots for people. So, yeah.
So I know you're working on a new album,
Yes.
which is cool, which I love albums. I love the idea of like a collection of work. I know some people are, in this day and age, it's all singles and all of that stuff, but I still
I
love
go,
an album.
I go big if I have to. They're going to see a lot of me.
Cool. So do you, I know it's in the works now. I think before we were on, you said it comes out in October, so we're
Yep.
a little ways out. So is there a theme? Like, do you have kind of a theme to the album, or what's that album
Yep.
creation process look like?
So this is exciting for me. I feel like this album has been, it's kind of a little bit of a self-motivating, self-reinvention album, mixed obviously with some of my big love songs in it.
Cool.
But I like with 2020 and 2021, we spent so much time kind of, well, of course there was the 2020 of nothing. And then 2021, I felt like everybody was like looking at their life and like reinventing themselves, reinventing who they are, maybe changing their job or changing where they live or changing who they're with. And that can give you about a million different song ideas. And so with that, there's like, it's easy to write about kind of moving forward and changing who you are, but then you're faced with, can I do this? Should I do this? Am I really going to do this album? Do I really write more music? Do people want to hear me? And there's all those like, you kind of put yourself in a corner that's not necessary, right? So it's like, there's parts of it where there's songs about pushing out of that. And then of course I do have some pretty big love ballads in there. You talk about 80s music. There's a real good one in there coming.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So yeah.
Is it kind of a range of like upbeat to ballad, or what does that look like?
Yeah, so I'm kind of known for my slower songs, but this one has a little bit more options for you. There's definitely more, we have drums on 4 songs, I think, which is definitely different from my last album. My first album was a lot of me and the piano. But the magic was found when there were other musicians that came in and changed it up and heard something. And so with this album, I just said, cool. I'm just singing my songs. You guys tell me, you take my music and add to it. And so there's a few songs that have, a good rhythm to them, and you'll kind of groove out, and then, you'll find yourself crying and motivated, and
that's good. So, so if people are interested, I know that I've seen you've been posting on, I think, your Facebook page, where you've kind of been chronicling, I think that's the right word, right? You've been showing the process of the album recording and stuff. So that's really cool.
Yeah, so I started out with my first album, and I loved going back and looking at those posts, at those blog posts, because I'm like, I forgot how I felt in that moment. Because when you are in this moment with other musicians who are so talented and bring so much to the table, or your producer who's sitting there super excited with you, you kind of forget that as time goes on, I think. And so to go back and read about it is awesome. So, even if I'm the only one who gets to go back and read it, that's okay. But I love it when other people go on there and like, I read your blog about that. That was so great. So yes, cool. On my there's a blog, and that talks about all the studio experience. And then I, of course, always post it on over Facebook too, everywhere.
So obviously, being where you're at now, if somebody watching this is maybe new to songwriting, or is just kind of getting that bug, what sort of advice do you have for them, as they're getting started?
So my biggest thing is, don't be afraid to write what you know. you may think of what you think of in your head as cliche, or nobody needs another song about how I lost my girlfriend last week. We do need that song, because guess what? Somebody else just lost their girlfriend last week too, right? So I feel like don't ever be afraid to write about what you know, and also reach out and let other people hear your music. I have to say, like, of course, with my friends listening to my music growing up, it was like, yeah, that was cool. And my brothers would give me some nice, honest feedback about some of my songs. But then when you surround yourself with other singer-songwriters, or just songwriters in general, who can hear your music and kind of, even if it's just an attaboy, or if it's like I hear this in you, or I hear this with that, it builds something up in you that is pretty incredible. So group, listening and being able to watch like what you do when you teach about it, how different ways to put together a song and write a song and feel different things through a song, like that's huge. So the way the internet is set up, we're pretty lucky.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of options to have other people hear you and read your lyrics or hear your music. So that's my advice. Don't be afraid to come out and share it, and share your story in it, because you can always have to tell everybody it's your story.
Absolutely. Change the names, yeah.
Perspective.
No, that's great advice. Awesome. So if people do want to check out your music and kind of follow you, as obviously we're a little ways out from the album coming out, but definitely want to follow you, what's the best way to find you online?
So go to my website, amandabperrymusic.com. And then I post a lot on Facebook. It's like, and you can always find on my website pretty much the same stuff that's on Facebook, but Facebook is a little bit more, it's kind of current and popping all the time. So cool. Either one, Amanda B. Perry Music. It's pretty, I kind of post a lot of stuff, so it's kind of easy to find if you just put my name out there.
Okay. That's good. That's good. Well, I can tell that you love music, and I can tell that you're having fun with what you're doing. And I think that's all that matters, right?
It pulls at every part of the good parts in your heart to be able to share it and keep writing. In fact, doing this with you inspired me. It's been 3.5 weeks since I wrote a song. And so I wrote a song this past weekend to just kind of get those juices flowing again. And it just feels so good to do it, so thanks for inspiring that song.
Well, you're welcome. Well, thanks so much for joining us here today. And hopefully when the album's back, or when the album's out, we'll have you back and we'll talk more about it.
That'd be great. Yep, it's called My Time, and it'll be out in October, so excited.
Awesome. Well, everybody, that's Amanda B. Perry here on athomesongwriting.com. And make sure that you check out her website. It's amandabperrymusic.com. So thanks for joining us, and we'll head to the next video.
Thank you, Chad.